Hey, I'm Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and I am back for part 3 of my series where I talk about my favorite mechanisms in games. All of these are mechanisms that I get really excited about when I see any game that has these mechanisms, or at least I'm curious about what these games are about when I see these mechanisms in these games. I also have a part 1 and a part 2, both of which I will link in the description of this video. Before I jump in, I wanted to mention that I did ask Stonemaier ambassadors about what their favorite mechanisms are to see if there were any patterns, just out of curiosity. And there were 3 that stood out among all the others. All 3 of these mechanisms made it to my original list in part 1 in 2020. And they were worker placement, engine building, and deck building in that order. Those were the top 3 from ambassadors. But let's jump into my top 10 list here. I'll pull up my other screen here. There we go. Here's Planet Unknown shown on screen right now. And the number 10 mechanism is waning decisions. So these are when your decision space in the game is decreasing as you play. And that this actually adds fun to the game. This doesn't always add fun to the game, but sometimes it does. And in this case, in Planet Unknown, as you are placing tiles on your board here, you have a tighter and tighter space as to where you can put new tiles. That's part of the challenge. That's part of the puzzle of this game, figuring out how you can fit in as many tiles as possible. Because if any player ever has a turn where they cannot place a tile, that triggers the end of the game. So you're trying to fill up your planet as best as you can. But even as the space is getting tighter and tighter, that means that you have more tiles that are giving you benefits that you can leverage by moving your rovers around to collect things. Yeah, so it's this constraint in this game, where this increasing constraint is actually an interesting mechanical element of the game. Another example of this is Role Player. In Role Player, you are building a character using dice, and as you complete different characteristics for that character, as you get closer to doing so, you have to make really crucial decisions to try to hit kind of a sweet spot for numbers that row wants you to have, or a certain color of dice in certain spaces. So the puzzle, the tightness of the puzzle, the fact that the puzzle starts out very loose and then becomes tighter as you play is what makes waning decision spaces fun for me in games. That's number 10. At number 9, we have accumulating values, and shown here is Castles of Mad King Ludwig, one of my favorite games. So in a game with accumulating values, it's typically the things in the game that are not chosen round to round gain in value. In this case, there's a person each round called the Master Builder in Castles of Mad King Ludwig they're going to position tiles next to the different costs here. See if I can zoom in a little bit, just a little bit. So if it's my turn, I can zoom in, I can place this tile next to the $10,000, and that means if someone wants to buy this tile, they have to pay me $10,000. But if no one chooses that tile, which maybe I wanted, maybe I priced it so expensively I didn't want someone to buy it because I wanted a chance to buy it later, this gains a single coin on it, and that coin comes along with that tile from now on. And if that happens again another round, that tile gains another coin. So the more often this tile is not chosen, the more coins it accumulates. This is also the case in the game Terra Mystica. In Terra Mystica, the income tiles that you don't choose gain a coin, making them a little bit more valuable for players in a future round. And also Century Spice Road or Century Golem Edition, this does it in a slightly different way, in that if you want to buy a certain card in the game, but you don't want the leftmost card in the row, then you need to pay any token, any resource that you want onto that card as far down to the row as you want to go until you get to the card that you actually want to buy. So it's actually accumulating values, not based on how long the card has been there necessarily, but based on what players want to get to within that row. So yeah, accumulating values, a really great mechanism, especially with to create interesting economies in games. That's at number 9. At number 8, here's my game Euphoria shown here, and this is the mechanism of dice selection and or dice placement. In Euphoria, the dice are your workers, and you are rolling them when you retrieve them, and then you are placing the dice with numbers that you know are on those dice because you're rolling before you actively place them on different benefits across the board to gain different things. I like the variety that dice have. I love rolling dice. I love these games where they give you the opportunity to roll dice quite frequently, but I don't want to roll at the moment that I need to make a decision. I want to roll in advance and then use the number on that die or whatever's on the die. I love custom dice too, to make a decision in the game. Other examples of this are the White Castle, where you have a great choice between, you're actually drafting dice in that game or drafting a die on your turn and choosing where you want to place it. And there's, I think, the White Castle does a great job of adding number parity, giving value to lower and higher numbers. I tried to do that in Euphoria as well. And then in Castles of Burgundy, you are rolling dice and then deciding what benefits you want to gain from those dice. You're not really placing the dice somewhere, but you're assigning them to a certain benefit of the game. I think Castles of Burgundy does a great job with just giving you 2 dice on your turn to use. You get a broad range of choices as to what you do with those dice. So yeah, dice placement and dice selection at number 8 on this list. At number 7, we have multi-use cards. I am fascinated by multi-use cards. It's something that I've tried to use in some of our games, but I see a lot of other games using it in some brilliant ways, including, as shown here, in Forest Shuffle. In Forest Shuffle, you actually have multiple cards built into a single piece of cardboard. So you have these split cards where a single card is either, you're playing it either for the top half of the card or the bottom half of the card. They can also be split vertically. So you can decide, okay, am I going to play the left side or the right side? When you play it, you slot it under a tree. So that way, you know, okay, I played it for the badger, not the, what is that? Looks like some sort of bat. Yeah, this is a bat. No, I haven't played it for the bat. So Forest Shuffle uses the cards in this way for that purpose. Magic the Gathering uses double-sided cards where they're multi-use in terms of, am I going to play it on one side of the card or the other? Ark Nova action cards are also double-sided in that way. You don't have a choice, but you are eventually, hopefully at some certain parts of the game, flipping over a card and permanently upgrading it. But also multi-use cards, a common example of it is having, you can play the card for its ability, or you can discard it for a single resource, or you can even use the card for some other function that the game is giving you. Like in the game SETI, there are 4 different uses for every card in the game. Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to give you too many choices as to what you do with cards, but I do like that in a game with any random card draw, that a single card is giving you multiple things to potentially do with it. So that is multi-use cards at number 7. At number 6, we have Space Base on the screen here, and this mechanism is called follow production. I love games when it's not my turn, if another player is producing something, that I get to produce something as well. I get to make something. I get to generate something in the game. Space Base does this by having the current player, the active player, roll 2 dice. And all players, if they have cards that activate when it's not their turn, they can use the numbers on the dice, either each die individually or the sum of the 2 dice, to gain a benefit from their own tableau, or gain benefits really from their own tableau. In Dice Forge, you're actually rolling dice on every turn. In Dice Forge, you're rolling your own custom dice that you're building. The difference is that when it's not your turn in Dice Forge, you can't buy anything. You're just accumulating resources to be ready to buy stuff. That's the same in Space Base. And also in Earth. Earth is another game that a lot of these have simultaneous mechanisms. But in Earth, when one player chooses what color of action they're activating that round, all other players get to activate all cards of that color. So they're following the production of the person whose current turn it is. I love this follow production mechanism in games. These are just a few examples, but there's a lot of games that use this. So that's follow production at number 6. At number 5, we have variable end of round scoring. So this is a really cool, I zoomed in too far. This is a really cool scoring mechanism in games. If a game has rounds, I love to see this mechanism in it. Basically, the idea is that at the end of each round, you're scoring a combination of 2 different things. So this is the Cartographers shown here, the game Cartographers. At the end of one of 4 rounds, round 1, you are going to score, I believe it's A. I'm going to forget this, but I believe it's A and D. I could have that wrong. You're scoring 2 of these cards at the end of round 1. And then at the end of round 2, you're scoring a different 2, and then a different 2 pairs every round, so that at the end of the game, you have scored each card twice. I will score A twice throughout the game, but in combination with a different card. Another game that does this is Isle of Skye. Isle of Skye does a similar thing where you're pairing together different benefits. And each round, the game says, okay, you're going to score these 2 this round. And it's not, well, it is random, but you know it throughout the game. So you can plan ahead and say, okay, I want to build up to this big score thing that I know is going to happen at the end of the game. Right now, I'm going to focus on or ignore this other scoring category so that I can get to that big score later. But every round, you do have that goal, and it is a variable pairing of goals as well. So I really love this, not just variable end of round scoring, but variable pairs of end of round scoring, I would say, is the real name for this mechanism at number 5. At number 4, I don't even know what to call this mechanism, but the idea is that you have a set amount of a resource to spend and spend until you run out to end your round. There's probably a more succinct way that I can say that. Hopefully I'll find a better way. So Joe could put it in the description for this category. A set amount of resource that you're using for the round, and that kind of determines the length of your round. In the Isle of Cats, which you can see here, that resource is fish. So you get to, on your turn, you are spending fish to gain tiles. And you just keep doing that until you run out of fish, or until you decide that you're done buying things. Another example of this is Clans of Caledonia. In each round of Clans of Caledonia, you're generating a lot of money. And then throughout the round, every action is just, how are you going to spend this money? You get to do one thing. You get to spend your money on one thing. What are you going to spend it on? And then you just do that over and over again until you decide, I've spent all my money, or I don't want to spend any more money this round. There's something really satisfying, I think, of getting that big wave of income. And then you have to decide, how do I want to spend this? Do I want to go for something big that costs a lot, but will limit the number of actions I take this round? Do I want to take a lot of little actions that maybe don't add up to all that much, but at least I'm doing more stuff? I really like that choice in these games, with this long title of having a set amount of a certain resource. I'll figure out a better way to say that you'll probably see it in the banner here if I found out with a better way to say it. That's at number 4. At number 3, the category of missions. I love games that give you missions to accomplish, especially if the missions are really well designed, as they are in Yedo, as we see here on the screen. So in Yedo, you have these missions, and you can choose the difficulty of the missions that you want to pursue. They're a little bit like quests. You could say this is quests or missions. And these are the types of missions where you're trying to gather a certain combination of resources to gain a certain benefit. In Yedo, not only are you given a choice between difficulty when you're drawing a random mission, but also you're given a choice when you complete a mission if you want to complete the standard mission. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. The standard version of it, here we go, up here, or the bonus version. So you have to do the standard portion of it, but the bonus is your choice. So you need these resources and you get this benefit, or you could also add this room, or have this room. You can spend this token and you get this additional benefit as well. So I like that choice of how deep into this mission do you want to go. The other cool thing about Yedo that Yedo does is that the missions will often want you to complete them on a specific place of the board. So if you are trying to thematically meet someone at a tavern, you have to actually have a meeple on the tavern when you complete the mission, which I think is really neat. Another great example of this is Lords of Waterdeep. I think the missions in Lords of Waterdeep are excellent because each mission isn't just giving you points. It's also giving you more stuff, more resources, or an ongoing benefit that you can use to move into or work towards the next mission. So every mission feels like you're making progress to the next mission rather than starting over from scratch. I really like that because there are certainly games where you complete a mission, you're like, oh, okay, well, it's like I've started a new game now. I need to start over completely. But that isn't the case in Lords of Waterdeep or Yedo. You're often getting something new that you can use to progress yourself in the game in other ways or towards the next mission. So well-designed missions are one of my favorite mechanisms in games at number 3. At number 2, one that has really risen the list over the last few years, I've really come to appreciate trick-taking games. I really like this style of game where it's a classic card style game where on your turn you are playing a single card into a trick, typically to try to win or lose that trick, depending on what the game is telling you. Typically the highest number wins. Typically there's also a trump suit, and you're also typically trying to follow the original suit that a player led. There's a lot of player interaction in these games. There's lots of little micro decisions, and I have a blast with them. I really enjoy them. It was actually really hard for me to pick my favorite here because I love Skull King. I love Cat in the Box, but Fellowship of the Ring is the one that I've really, really enjoyed recently. That's why I put Fellowship of the Ring here. This is a cooperative trick-taking game where you're choosing a character that gives you a little benefit, little bonus for that character. And this is every round of the game. You're choosing a character that gives you a benefit, but that character also gives you a goal. And whether or not the team wins or loses depends on you and all other players accomplishing the goals on their characters. Really cool game, really well designed. It reminds me a lot of The Crew, but somehow more immersive because they put the abilities and the tasks on the character cards in this game instead of having them be in a separate place in the crew. But I do appreciate the crew as well. But yeah, Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game, I really appreciated this as one of my favorite trick-taking games recently. And last, at number 1, we have instant win conditions. I don't want these in every game for sure. I definitely don't. But in a game that is designed well with an instant win condition, as is the case in Duel for Middle Earth, this Seven Wonders spinoff, it adds so much tension to the game to know that at any time you or the other player could win the game outright, just end the game and end it instantly by completing one of the 3 conditions to win the game. In this game, there's a spatial area control mission where you need to control all 7 areas. You can get the ring to Mount Doom, or catch the player who currently has the ring, or catch the good guys. Or you can create an alliance of all the different races in the game, all the different cultures of the game, and win the game that way. But the tension of these, especially added to this choice of cards in Seven Wonders Duel, which card do I take so that someone else can't get a certain card, or that I know they'll need to unlock a card that I can get in a minute. Yeah, I love the tension that these games with instant win conditions provide. Seven Wonders Duel, the original, also does this. Shards of Infinity has an instant win condition with Mastery. Even Space Base has a specific way that you can win the game. There's like one specific card, very difficult to accomplish, but if you can pull it off, you instantly win the game. Really satisfying, I think, when you can pull that off, especially in a game where it isn't where the most of the game is not built around that instant win condition, but you have that one category where it is. It's in Mistborn too, another recent game from that same designer. Really fun mechanism that I really enjoy. So yeah, those are 10 of my favorite mechanisms. I'd love to hear what your top 3 mechanisms are that I put on this list, and your number 1 game for each of those mechanisms. Let me know about that in the comments below. Thanks.